Insider fans, it's time for another episode of RFA Insider.
That was Amy and I'm Eugene, and today on RFA Insider we have a jam-packed schedule.
First up, in How It's Made, we're discussing student protests that have turned deadly in Bangladesh with Mahbub Leelen from our sister outlet, BenarNews.
And then after our star-studded podcast Free Asia, it's an all AFCL affair on the rundown with two stories from the Asia Fact Check Lab, one concerning China and South Korea, and the other concerning China and the moon.
The moon again?
Yep, the moon, the bow of Artemis, the big cheese.
Sounds loony. But stay tuned for all that and more because we'll be right back after this.
You're listening to the RFA Insider podcast, made by two real-life staffers at Radio Free Asia.
If you'd like to send us feedback, there are many ways you can do this.
You can send us an email at insider@rfa.org.
You can comment on our webpage at rfa.org/English/insider. Just click on the episode you're listening to and write your comment below.
Or you can send us a tweet at RFA Insider or visit us in person.
No, don't visit us in person.
Right, don't visit us in person. But anyway, we really want to hear from you.
So tune in every other Friday and we'll take you behind the scenes.
And tell you what the news really means here at RFA Insider.
어떻게 만들었지?
他们是打嘞。
怎么做的？
How it's made.
What you've just heard is from massive unrest in Bangladesh that started last month as students took to the streets to protest government hiring policies. And these protests have turned deadly with more than 200 people killed in the violence and police arresting more than 10,000 others.
And with us today to talk about this is the Bangla content manager Mahbub Leelen from RFA's sister outlet BenarNews. And once again, BenarNews reports on security, politics, and human rights on the local and regional level for the people in the Philippines, Indonesia, Malaysia, Thailand, and Bangladesh. So welcome to the podcast, Leelen.
Yay!
Thank you, Amy and Eugene, for inviting me here.
Yes, it's our pleasure to have you in the studio with us. So let's get right into it and try to get some background on this. Why are the students protesting in Bangladesh?
I am afraid that it doesn't have very straightforward answers.
Right.
It has many cross-cutting issues for years. So in Frontline, basically we see that they are protesting for the job quota reform. In Bangladesh, before a few days, it was kind of 56% was reserved for under different quotas, and then 44% were merit-based. And it is one of the highly unemployment issue in Bangladesh, more than 2.6 million unemployed. And the number of public job is surprisingly very low. It's about 1.5 million. So the issue is for the less than 200 families, out of 170 million population, reserve 30% is an issue. And nobody were heroes known as Mukti Jodha or freedom fighters are highly respected people in the society, in Bangladesh society. So nobody asked the question when in 1972 a quota was reserved for them because they contributed to the independence of the country. Then it went to the second generation, their children. Also it was okay because still those freedom fighters were alive, they were happy. But now it is third generation who are less than 30.
So they're great-grandchildren.
Yeah, grandchildren. So others are thinking that because this is a small number, according to the gadget, that only for this small number, 30% is reserved. Students who want to compete for the job on merit-based, they feel that, okay, we are treated unfairly. Because of quota, someone is getting the chance, but I scored higher.
Okay, so that's a lot of information to digest all at once. So I just want to make sure that we have this clear. So people who are descendants of the freedom fighters in the war against Pakistan to get Bangladeshi independence, they were given privileges in preferential hiring right after the war was over. And this has continued for 3 generations.
Yeah.
And I guess now you're saying these people who are now the grandchildren of those freedom fighters are getting unfair advantages. That's what the students feel.
Yeah.
And so they are protesting against those hiring practices that would disproportionately make it beneficial for those descendants of the freedom fighters, saying that although they haven't scored as well as I have, they get the preferential hiring policy because
of this
just because they are descended from those people.
Not only percentage, also they're getting extra 2 years to enter into the job.
Extra 2 years to apply.
Because for general people to enter into a government job, a public job, it is 30 years maximum, years of age. But people comes with under quota system, they get 2 extra years, so 32 years for them.
Oh, you mean age 30 and age 32? Okay, I see. So they can apply at a much later date. I see. Okay.
So those protesting against the quota system say that the quotas unfairly benefit Prime Minister Hasina and her party, the Awami League. Is that because most of the freedom fighters or descendants of the freedom fighters are in the Awami League?
That was one reason. And second reason, Sheikh Hasina was Prime Minister in 96 again, once, the first time. And end of her tenure, she also issued thousands of certificates as a freedom fighter to families. So those have some questions. So people think only people who are pro-Awami League or pro-her party could manage those certificates. And there are a lot of reports about fake certificates or who didn't been to the war, who were even a very minor child that time during the war gets a certificate. So his or her family gets those benefits. So it's somehow comes with in line with the ruling party.
I see.
Issues.
So the issue is that the government gets to decide who was a descendant of the freedom fighters.
And one more thing, the agitation or the anger is not about jobs. We have seen that in 2018 there was also the similar protest. And that time Prime Minister just removed those quotas amid protest. And young generation having another anger that for many years they're not even getting their rights to vote. Because we have seen reports about Bangladesh election systems. So all kind of anger, when there is a protest, all types of angers come together against the government. And now for the more than 15 years, it is Sheikh Hasina and her government. So everything goes to that direction.
I see. So in some ways then, I guess the government is using the quota system to benefit those who support the Prime Minister then?
That the general students think, ordinary people think.
Okay. So as you said, the quota system was introduced in 1972 and then abolished in 2018. But then they reinstated in June, which has triggered the student protest. So why did they reinstate it then?
It was a writ petition by some members of those freedom fighters to the court that this government decision about abolishing that quota was unfair. So in June, High Court kind of reinstated that quota, kind of re-established the quota system, saying that government decision in 2018 for removing those quota system was not correct or not legal. So High Court brought it back.
Okay. How much do these quotas affect students' career goals and future plans?
As I said before, unemployment is a big issue, and public service is a secured job for a long period of time in terms of status, in terms of financial benefits. And when people go to retirement, they get really kind of very big amount of money to settle their life. And private jobs are not consistent. So people good students always try to get a public job. Even recently we interviewed some students, protesters. They are saying that they were in the merit list, but someone who scored lower got the job under a quota. So it is somehow they feel because we are competing for the job, but our size is only less than 50%. Other people said, but they don't really protesting against those people, indigenous people who live far behind the facilities. People think, okay, they should get that. People who have disabilities and in disadvantaged areas, that's it. But this is a large block, 30% for about 200,000 families, only people.
So just in case our listeners don't know, for the exact quota system, 30% of the civil service jobs are for descendants of the freedom fighters. But then after that, 10% are for women and people from underdeveloped districts, and 5% for indigenous peoples, and 1% for differently abled peoples.
There was another district quota for 10%.
Oh, okay. On top of all.
Yeah,
that.
on top of. So Dhaka is also a district. It's more than 20 million people live there. But there are some people, there are districts also where 500,000 people live. So district quota is also an issue. So I have seen in my personal experience, my friends who actually residents of Dhaka, but they are kind of making fake documents to a less populated district to apply so that they have better chance.
So it's just too competitive in Dhaka.
Too competitive in Dhaka
see.
or large cities, large districts.
Okay, this might sound like a silly question, but let's say you are a descendant of one of the freedom fighters and you're a woman. Do you then check off both requirements if you're in that case?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Which comes first?
It's a good question.
Okay. I
Yeah.
see.
And if I am also a tribal member, I'll put.
Oh, so then you
click
get 3 preferential.
on- Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so
Nothing with a child. We want justice. We want justice.
So going back to what you mentioned about political discontent, the ruling party, the Awami League, recently extended its 15 years in power with another 5-year term after the opposition party boycotted the last election. So has it always been that bad? Have people always been so dissatisfied with the current government, or has it slowly been getting worse and worse?
in Bangladesh history, people are always against the ruling party. And in Bangladesh, it was independent, got independence in 71. Then after that, in 1992, first election took place, democratic election. So then we saw a pattern, the changing of the government. That was the opposition party, BNP-led government, change of pattern in every 5 years. So in 96, Awami League came into power, and 2001 again, BNP came into power. And then after 2006, there was a 2 years of military intervention. And then we see only Sheikh Hasina is continuing, and many issues raised about the election practice for the fourth consecutive terms. So, and people are thinking they're not going to cast vote. Bangladesh was one of the highest vote casting country in the world. People take it as a festival and they go. But in last few terms, we see nobody is going, and we have reports opposition leader is in jail now. So this is the thing really happening, that everything is now against one government. Any frustration, any issues are against one government and no others, because our oppositions are kind of non-existing type, in a non-existing type position.
Right.
So then would you say then that voters have lost faith in the electoral system then?
They lost their right to vote.
I see.
Because we have seen reports that even before the election day, ballot boxes were full.
No, my.
And we have seen that
Was this the last election?
last election and before previous one, and people went to the center and found that their votes have already been cast. And we have seen a lot of videos and reports that the party members are taking the full book of the ballot and they're just stamping.
I see. So they see it as a blatant violation of their voting rights then, and
Yeah.
that's why they've lost faith. Okay, so the situation exploded on July 14th after Hasina called the peaceful student protesters by the term Razakar, which that's a derogatory term for those who worked with Pakistan during the independence struggle, essentially calling you a traitor by using that word. Can you put this into context for us? Why was her comment so inflammatory?
3 things are there. As I said before, in Bangladesh, the word Muktijoddha or freedom fighter is the highest respectful word. And in against the Rajakar, who were collaborators of Bangladeshi people, but who were collaborating with the Pakistani army. So they were known commonly as Rajakars, mean betrayers or traitors.
Right.
So many of them, they supported there, then later they took off. They are Bangladeshi citizens. And according to Bangladeshi law, someone cannot be punished for someone else's crime. So if someone's grandfather was a Rajakar,
Yes.
in actual, so grandchildren cannot be blamed for that.
Okay.
So they really kind of reacted, and it's the most insulting word in Bangladesh, Rajakar. Now, insulting word.
So the government imposed a curfew and they cut off the internet and mobile data services as the situation grew more violent after Hasina called them Rezakars. How unusual is such a decision, and what was the government's goal in doing so?
Okay, first thing, Sheikh Hasina has some kind of pattern. She never depends on military, never did before. She never called curfew before, so never called military to have help or handle civil situation. For the first time, Hasina government issued a curfew. For the first time, they called military to take the street, hit the street. So this is the kind of significance thing, because civil administration, police and paramilitaries were kind of unable to handle the situation. And government was in a very strict position regarding dialogue. And government ruling party has a big wing of student politicians. So they started beating and protesting those people. So that became kind of a series of reactions from the job quota reform demand. Then it turned into the reactions of the abuse by her party members and police. Then it became curfew, a kind of stopping internet, phones, other things. And then now it is all about killing of so many people.
So it's in some ways then it's a tit for tat. You do this and then we'll do this and then you do this.
Yeah.
Okay. So basically taking more and more privileges away as the protest goes on.
Yeah. And one thing I have noticed that, during protest, during curfew or internet blockage, people only heard about numbers. This many people died. But once those internet came back, now people started realizing who are they? Relatives, kids, co-workers. So now it is kind of more about feeling, I knew this boy, he was a student, he was my student. No, he was just a student of grade 9, 14 years, 13 years, something like this. So now it is more emotional because now people are connecting who were those people.
Yeah, as the details become available, it starts to hit harder then. Despite the internet blackouts, BenarNews has been able to cover the announcement of the curfew and updated death tolls faster than many of the other media outlets. So how is BenarNews able to get this information from inside the country during the blackout?
Okay, I'll share a personal story. In the morning, I have a 4-year-old boy. So I was trying to call and receiving call. Then he came to me. And it was more than half an hour in the morning, about 7 o'clock. He came to me and said, say more. Because I was just saying hello. And he knows that, in phone, when we receive or call phone, we don't say just hello for half an hour.
Yeah.
So we say something more. So what we did, we tried all aspects. And it was really kind of, we could hear hello. But then word was impossible to guess what someone is saying. Then we cut, and we also checked with other friends who live abroad, any apps or other things. So sometimes they suggested, this app is working. So we used that one. So what we did, we started collecting word by word, keywords rather than full quotes. So what really happened, the keyword. Then we took that keyword, noted down, and then we sit together, and with a speakerphone, we tried in different apps, phones, and we were just trying to capture single words. So number, what is this number? Arrest or death? Then after maybe few 10 minutes try, we are confirmed that, this is the number from death. Who said that? Police or hospital? Then maybe another 20 minutes to confirm this is hospital source. So, and then in the first day, I counted that 64 calls I made or received to get out, I would say, 30 keywords.
Wow.
For the story.
So I'm sorry, I'm confused a little bit. So you could connect with people, but then the call would be cut quickly? Is that what
it was
going
kind on? Of the internet phone was down to 2G system.
Oh, I see.
So it was really hard to hear and no app were working, but somehow there were some apps.
I see.
So that worked for an hour. One day I could understand a full sentence with an app, but Afternoon again, I saw that is not working.
So because the data was on the 2G network, it was too slow, and then that way the only brief words would come out and mostly be unintelligible.
Even it's hard to guess what is brief word.
I see.
There was always a risk to make mistakes.
Right.
So we sit together, 4 or 5 people. We're trying to understand what he or she is saying from other side
So
and
you
noting
could,
down.
verify with each other.
So in first few days, we depended on keywords. We put them on quote marks rather than full sentence.
And shifting gears a little bit, so at Radio Free Asia, often whenever we hear about Bangladesh in our news cycle, it's in the context of the Rohingya Muslims who have been displaced from Myanmar, living in these massive camps, including 1 million in the city of Cox's Bazar. So in what way is this ongoing unrest affecting the Rohingya, if you know, and is it disrupting camp life in any way?
I won't say no, I would say yes immediately. Just yesterday I saw a small news. There were more than 2 hours of gunfight in camps in Cox's Bazar and 2 men died immediately, but very few news media covered it. So this is an example. We regularly cover Rohingya issues, even small things. One of our biggest coverage areas is Rohingya, but last 2 weeks we are not covering because of many reasons, phone connections and priority issues. We have a small team here, and I'm not sure international media is also looking at that.
Right.
And to be honest, I would say many people don't know what's happening there. It's kind of more than 1 million people live in a small place where 40,000 people per square kilometer. So this is the density of the Rohingya camp.
Right.
So if you think we don't really know, or people don't really have, and Rohingya also depend on supply from Bangladeshi. Their food goes from Bangladeshi farmers, Bangladeshi people, food and other supplies. So if transport communication is disturbed, automatically they will be disturbed. And those people are not allowed to go outside for work, so they depend on supply.
Okay, and I just wanted to do my duty of a little bit of advertising. RFA's investigative team is going to do a story about the Rohingya during this crisis. And so please check out information from the RFA investigative team, which will be coming out soon. Are there any other thoughts or any final words that you'd like to have about this particular issue?
We are not unsure what's going to happen. We have seen that even after curfew, protests haven't stopped. So now it is taking a new shape. Even today there are protests. Civil society people, teachers, lawyers are coming on the street, and they are now demanding for justice of killings, abuse, injuries. So it's still not clear what's going to happen.
Thank you so much for such an in-depth explainer on, this very complicated issue.
Yeah, so I have to say I came into it knowing almost nothing about what was going on, and I think I have a much greater understanding now thanks to your explanation. So thank you very much.
Yeah,
thank you,
and thank
Eugene.
you for your hard work reporting.
Thank you, Eugene and Emmy, for these things. I'm not sure that I could clearly explain everything because really complex issues are there.
Indeed.
Like what you hear so far?
Can you spare 3 seconds to help us out?
It'd really mean a lot to us if you would like and subscribe and follow us on whatever platform you're using to listen to us.
We're begging you. We're pleading with you.
Actually, we're just kind of asking nicely.
Yeah, that. Thanks a bunch. Okay, wow. That interview with Leelen, that was, actually kind of moving. I was really surprised by how he was talking about, getting just a single words out of people he was trying to interview over the internet. That was really powerful. I think.
Or just having 4 people huddled over a cell phone trying to pick out a single word over hours?
Yeah. And also there's so much history involved in this too. So if you have no understanding of how even Bangladesh even became a country, then that's as far back as it goes, right? And so a lot of people will think, okay, well, they must have been fighting for independence. When you say the freedom fighters, right? They must have been fighting for independence from Great Britain.
Right.
But that's not the case. Before Bangladesh was called East Pakistan, and there was West Pakistan and East Pakistan, and it goes on, and you have to like really kind of study history even to get like a basic understanding of who the freedom fighters are and why they were given special treatment to get preferential hiring practices, I guess.
Right, or even Leelen explaining like that Razakar was like the worst thing you could call someone in Bangladesh, which I didn't learn.
Collaborator. I mean, I also, I looked it up when I was doing a little bit of research to try to prepare for this, but everything that I read said that it means traitor, but he was saying it means collaborator. And, given my own background as a Korean person, that's like the worst thing you could be called in Korea. Like if you were collaborating with the Japanese during the colonial era, and people who actually were will like really try to downplay that in their background. So that really brought it home for me and made me realize exactly how terrible that word is. Right. But let's get on to something a little bit lighter. So I think it's a good time to start with Podcast Free Asia. So we have a lot to cover on PFA today. So let's get started. We got our first listener email.
Okay. Oh, sorry.
Ooh.
Wow.
Okay. So our first listener email, I'm going to read it. It starts, "Hello, dear." That's a good start.
Yeah. It's very kind.
I'm Bella from Qingdao Shiwan Cosmetics Company Limited, a professional hairpin manufacturer in China.
I'm listening.
Our products are known for their high quality, competitive pricing, and excellent service. We offer a wide range of products, including genius weft, flat weft, cut printing, offset printing, I-tip, flat tip, U-tip, nano ring, and more. I don't know what all of those are. Are those different types of hairpins?
Your guess is as good as mine.
Okay. If you have any purchasing requirements or interested in cooperation opportunities with us, please feel free to contact us at your convenience. Thank you. And best regards, Bella Qingdao Shiwan Cosmetics Company Limited, and then it has their address. All right. So wait, I think this is an amazing business opportunity. Think about it. We could have a whole line of RFA cosmetics. We get RFA branded lipsticks, and they'd be in the RFA green. Right?
Oh, okay, like Shrek.
And eyeshadows and compact mirrors and BB cream and nail polish. You know what? They're already in China, so that's like the biggest market in the world. Think of it. Not only would RFA get our own brand recognition out there, we'd make some money off of it too. Let's give Bella a call right now.
Eugene, the idea of putting on RFA branded BB cream before coming to work is giving late stage capitalism.
But then again, I mean, they did say that they just make hairpins. And
True.
So do you know what any of those, seriously, I-tip, flat tip, U-tip? I mean, I guess that's the shape of the
pins?
The pin, but I just thought a hairpin was just, one type.
Bella, we are down to be sponsored.
Yes.
Contact us.
Right. So hook us up. So let's move on to real PFA stuff. So we have some extraterrestrial corrections to make. In the previous episode, when we were talking about the star Sirius in the constellation Canis Major and the dog days of summer, I said that it was surprising that the expression came from astrology, and it turns out I should have said astronomy. Astrology is the belief that celestial objects affect events on Earth, whereas astronomy is the scientific study of everything outside of Earth's atmosphere. This is coming from a listener who pointed this out to me.
Okay.
But yes, astronomy is the more appropriate term, and usually when we use astrology, we are talking about zodiac signs. And speaking of zodiac signs, happy Leo month to us, Amy.
Wow, I want a listener to be like, I knew they were Leos.
So here's another useless factoid that is actually about astrology. Did you know that we are in fact not Leos, we're Cancers?
Okay. Why?
So the zodiac was made in 600 BC during the Age of Aries. Do you know what the Age of Aries means?
I do not.
Okay, so the Age of Aries means that on the vernal equinox, which is the first day of spring, the sun will rise in the constellation Aries.
Oh, okay. Like the position.
Right. So at that time, during the Leo month, when the sun is rising in Leo, it was between July 22nd and August 22nd. So that's why they say the people born between those dates are Leos, which is us, right?
Gotcha.
But because the Earth wobbles as it spins, the constellation that the sun rises on the first day of spring changes over time to a different zodiac constellation as time passes. This is in a cycle called precession. It cycles through all the zodiac constellations in a 25,800-year cycle.
Okay.
So, around 100 BC, we entered the age of Pisces, meaning that the sun rises in Pisces on the first day of spring. So now the sun is rising in Leo between August 11th and September 16th. That's after both of our birthdays.
You mean currently?
Yeah. Correct.
Oh, so we're still following an outdated system then.
So instead, we were both born actually at the tail end of Cancer rather than the front end of Leo.
This is not as shocking to me as it is to you because I was already cusp. So
what do you mean you were cusp?
Cusp is right on the tail end of Cancer.
So I wonder, when you're looking at the zodiac signs, often do you say, well, that doesn't really sound like me, and then check the one next to you, and well, that actually sounds more like me.
Yeah.
That happens a lot. I actually found that to be the case more with Virgo than Cancer, but that's just me.
So when does the age of Pisces end?
This is the dawning of the age of Aquarius, the age of Aquarius, Aquarius.
Wow, you really put yourself into that one, Eugene.
Seriously. That's also up for the debate. Does the age start when the sun rises at the halfway point between the constellations or when it actually touches it? And also the constellations are in different sizes. So based on these differing definitions, we've been in the age of Aquarius since as early as 1447, or it won't be here until 3597. But the most common estimates say that it came either in the 20th century or it will start within the next few hundred years. But yes, whenever we are firmly in the age of Aquarius, then people born on our birthdays will no longer be Cancers, they will be Gemini.
Oh, can I propose a segment where we discuss the horoscopes of world leaders in Asia?
That would be fun. That would be fun. Let's do that. So let's see. Do you know the birthdays of any world leaders in Asia?
Offhand.
I could do it for deceased North Korean leaders, but then I have to line it up. So what is February? I don't even know. No, okay, so
listeners, let us know.
Let's skip past that. There's another correction. While we were discussing moon rocks in the last one, I said that moon rocks in the world were either gifted by the United States to other countries because the U.S. were the only ones who had ever been to the moon.
So to clarify, the U.S. sent the moon rocks all over.
Yes, because I think the U.S. is the only country that's been to the moon.
Gotcha.
So this is actually true if you consider manned missions, but if you also consider robotic missions, then the Soviets have also been to the moon, and as have the Chinese with the Chang'e 6, which is what we were discussing last episode. Those missions went to the moon and brought back rocks, and then those rocks were potentially gifted to other people. So thanks to another listener for pointing that out. Yes, moon rocks have been given to other countries by the Soviets. And possibly by the Chinese, because at the time we were discussing the story, the way I said it, it seemed like it would be in the future that they would land, but it had already landed and come back by then with moon rocks. So moving on, there was a volume issue on certain apps that if you were listening to episodes, people were always telling us that, RFA Insider sounds very quiet, right? Well, we've moved to another platform. So if you are listening on the apps, then I've made it so that it corrects the volume issue. But if you're still listening on YouTube, we can't replace those videos without losing the stats. But from now on, everything on YouTube will be at an audible volume level. So thank you. Don't blow out your ears expecting, it's RFA Insider, I got to go up to 10, and then it's going to be really loud. So just please be careful. Disclaimer. We'd
also like to take this time to tell you about another RFA podcast called Master of Deceit, which was made by RFA's investigative team.
Yes, we introduced this podcast in our last episode. It's about Wang Shujin, a Chinese-American democracy activist who was accused of spying for China. And episode 1 of Master of Deceit dropped 2 weeks ago, and it introduces Wang in the case. Episode 2 dropped last week, and it was about the spy war between China and the U.S. and how people are getting caught up in it.
So episode 3, which comes out tomorrow, explores the tight-knit world of the Chinese dissident community in the U.S., one that's reeling from suspicions of spying, infiltration, and even a murder. So let's listen to a quick preview.
That's Xiaoning Zhang shouting at journalists who've asked if she regrets the knifing. No, she said, you're the ones who should regret what you've done. You're Chinese, but now you're traitors. You're against the Communist Party. The things she was saying, they were CCP slogans, propaganda from the Chinese Communist Party.
All right, so listen to Master of Deceit wherever you find podcasts, and if you're having trouble finding it, add RFA or Radio Free Asia to the search term. But moving right along, I think it's now time for...
The Rundown.
The Rundown.
Okay, so the theme of today's rundown is silly Weibo rumors.
Okay, and Weibo, for people who do not know, is the Twitter of in China. Is that the case? X. Sorry.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Basically, the biggest social media platform in China. And to preface this rundown, I want to put out this cursory acknowledgement here that stuff posted by Chinese netizens doesn't necessarily represent the opinions of the general public,
right.
so much as it does very specific online communities.
Yeah, thank goodness for that. I mean, if you were to judge the United States and its political discourse based on online comments, that would be pretty bad.
Now that acknowledgement is out of the way, for the first story on the rundown, we're going to return to space and the Chang'e 6 mission.
Oh, again.
And
cool.
This is featuring a quick and easy debunking from Asia Fact Check Lab. So it's fake news about fake news, if you will.
Fake news about fake news.
We're getting meta.
Yes.
A few Chinese social media users shared a screenshot of a BBC News report that says that the Chinese spaceship abused aliens on the moon. So this screenshot spread after China's robotic lunar mission, the Chang'e 6, completed its mission of collecting samples from the far side of the moon.
Okay.
So the whole point of this fake news about fake news was to discredit Western media. Look at this bogus story that they're spreading about us.
Wait, I'm getting something. This just in. Breaking news. Lance Armstrong is safe. He is unharmed by the Chang'e 6 space mission. He's okay. Lance Armstrong is okay. He's checked in. He's doing fine on the moon.
Thank God.
Okay. All right, go on, please. Sorry. I didn't mean to take away from your reporting of this.
Okay. Eugene will never let that go.
Oh, of course not.
So one comment on the Weibo post about this I thought, which is kind of funny, was at least we think our moon landing is real. Tying back to...
Burn.
But fortunately for the aliens, this BBC screenshot was found to be fake. It was pieced together from another BBC report that actually did talk about the Chang'e 6 space probe, just not about alien abuse on the moon.
Or bicyclist abuse.
Yes.
Okay. All right, moving right along, we got some Paris Olympics news. There was a little mishap that occurred during the opening ceremony. Have you watched the opening ceremony?
I did not watch the opening ceremony.
Okay, so people were coming along on boats. Instead of having, the procession, the parade of nations, usually the people will march into the stadium and they'll be carrying the flag. But in Paris, they did this on boats, which is pretty interesting. And as each boat was going by, the announcers would say the name of the country or countries on that particular boat. But when they're with the South Korean team, they read the name in both French and English, but they got it wrong.
République populaire démocratique de Corée.
Democratic People's Republic of Korea.
For the South Korea team.
So they called it the Democratic People's Republic of Korea. And, the DPRK is, of course, North Korea. South Korea is the Republic of Korea. Whoops!
Oh.
But what can I say? This kind of thing actually does happen a lot. And it's confusing. When you see the word democratic, you're like, well, yeah, South Korea is the democracy, so it must be them. My father, who used to work for a U.S. government program that would take South Korean visitors around the U.S. on multi-city tours, sometimes they'd meet with local governments or companies and they'd roll out the red carpet for these people and they put the flag out to receive them, right? But sometimes they brought out the wrong flag. They bring out the North Korean flag because the intern or at whatever location they happen to be just didn't think to check. And that's what you get. And if you see democracy, democracy, that's the good guys, right?
Yeah.
But at the Olympics, I mean, come on, there's no excuse. Later on, they did get North Korea's name right in the procession, though, so somebody must have realized the mistake.
I was mentioning to you earlier that it reminded me of when sporting competitions accidentally used the Borat version of Kazakhstan's anthem.
Oh, that's awful. And there's
the Kazakhstan wins.
And then that's a funny mistake, but then there's another mistake that I have been made privy to where during like a tennis tournament in Hawaii, there was somebody who was singing the German national anthem in German, but using the first verse. And the Germans today use only the third verse because the first verse was used by Nazi Germany. Oof. And they've kind of want to distance themselves from the Nazis by doing that. So it was pretty bad. But so I wonder if there's going to be some kind of retaliation in Korea over this, where instead of calling the bakery, Paris Baguette, they're going to call it London Baguette, right? Because,
Yes.
No, that's not going to happen. That's not going to happen. But I did want to give a Korean test to Amy. So you've got the Chinese characters there. Can you say the official names of both countries in Korean If not, Chinese or Japanese will do, since they are both using the same characters.
Let's do appreciate you putting the Chinese characters on the script for me, but I do have to also say that I'm illiterate, so
yes,
it does not
you did
help.
mention that. It doesn't help at all?
No, I'm illiterate. That means I can't read.
Let's start with South Korea then. So have you ever seen like World Cup soccer? The crowd is chanting the official name of the country.
Yes.
And they go dun 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 dun.
대한민국?
Yeah, there you go. That's good. 대한민국. Okay. And then the other one is
I've absolutely no idea.
All right, so we said that Hanguk is South Korea, North Korea is
Joseon?
Joseon. So that's what the first two characters are, and then the democratic. Do you know what that is in Chinese or Korean? Okay, so Joseon 민주주의 인민공화국, right?
I wasn't going to get that.
it's very, very long. So that's why North Korea, they just call it Joseon, and South Korea, they call it Hanguk. But since we're talking about the name of Korea, all right, so going back again to the AFCL, they fact-checked some reports in the Chinese language media that South Korea was petitioning to change its name in Chinese from Hanguk, or Hanguo in Mandarin, to characters that sound like Korea. In this case, Korea in Chinese.
Okay.
And the reason being because they want to de-sinicize and appease the United States. But before we get into the de-sinicization part, let's just analyze the character meanings of the name. So these characters are chosen for their sounds, not for their meaning. And when I asked several Mandarin speakers at Radio Free Asia, they said, no, the meaning doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Just skip past that. But still, every character means something. So I just wanted to, just so people who do know Chinese, they will be able to know which characters we're talking about, because this is an audio format. So the first one is gao, which means examine or test. And then second one is ri, which means lucky. And then ya, which is the first part of the term Asia, right?
Yes.
So this could mean test lucky Asia. And then also Ri-ya could be the Chinese way to say the Greek goddess Rhea, who is the wife of Cronus, who's the father of Zeus.
I think that one's like a transliterary word.
Yeah, so either his wife was named Lucky Asia, or it's just a transliteration, right? So it could be testing Rhea or testing Lucky Asia. But anyway, the AFCL did go into many refutations of the claim, but the very first thing they should have done, I think, is to simply say the new characters as they are pronounced in Korean, because, if they're trying to de-sinicize, then these characters should sound like Korea in Korean, right?
Right.
But it's instead of sounding like Korea, it sounds like Kosowa. So right away, this is false. And also, if they wanted to de-sinify, they would not write the name in Chinese characters at all. They just use Hangul. So
yes, right.
I don't really see how that makes much sense. Additionally, the Chinese character Han, which means Korea, doesn't mean anything else other than Korea, except when referencing an ancient kingdom in China. So have you heard of the Han Kingdom of ancient China?
I have not.
Okay, so this was centered around the modern-day provinces of Henan and Shaanxi during the Warring States period. It lasted from 403 to 230 BC. And it's pretty obvious, though, whenever you hear references to Hangul using that character, it refers to South Korea. It's not referring to that ancient kingdom usually. All right, so let's get on to their refutations. It appears that this rumor has come up sporadically for the past 15 years, and this time it was going around on Weibo before news outlets picked it up. There's another wrinkle that this time was added to the rumor. That a South Korean lawmaker named Lee Sang-hoon published the legislation, but the AFCL found that there isn't anybody in the National Assembly named Lee Sang-hoon. And so there's no telling why he's in the rumor, other than that Lee Sang-hoon is a super common name, so it's probably believable, right?
So they just went like, John Smith.
Yeah, exactly. Congressman John Smith representing Iowa, right? Like that. Now, I also have a theory about why this has been appearing in the news over the years, and I want to reiterate that, though, this is my speculation. So in 2005, the city of Seoul officially declared that in Mandarin it would change how it was being called. Seoul is one of the only cities in Korea that does not have Chinese characters for its name, because Seoul is a word with an indigenous Korean origin. Did you know that?
I guess I hadn't really thought about it, but it does make sense when you say it.
All of the other cities do have Chinese characters for the most part. So prior to it officially being called Seoul, during the Japanese colonial era, for instance, it was called Keijo by the Japanese, and those characters in Korean would be pronounced as Gyeongsong. So in Chinese, that would be Jingcheng in Mandarin.
I need the little tone markers.
Yeah, I don't.
Jingcheng.
Well, it's the same Jing from Beijing and
Jingcheng.
Okay. You can still find examples today, though, of people referring to Seoul by Gyeongsang. There's a Gyeongsang High School in Seoul, for example.
Okay.
But prior to the colonial era, the city was called Hansong. And the Han in Hansong is the same Han that means Chinese.
Oh.
So in Mandarin, this would be pronounced as Hancheng. And translated literally, that basically means Chinese city.
I see.
Once Seoul started calling itself Seoul, they kept calling it Hancheng in places where people speak Chinese. And I guess Korea didn't like that Chinese speakers were still calling the city by an older name. So the South Korean government went with new characters, specifically chosen for how they sound in Mandarin. And it would sound like Seoul-er.
Yeah.
And these actually do have meanings. The first one means capital, and is a final particle, which I'm assuming is a grammar thing.
I think it's just a sound thing.
Okay. But I guess China could have seen it as Seoul being kind of petty and wanting to get rid of the name Hancheng because the Han part means China. And either rightfully or wrongfully, it can appear that they are doing this because they want to minimize the influence of China has had over Korea. But that the city is not named after the Han dynasty in China. It's actually named after the Han River, which runs through the city. But then, of course, the question arises, what is the river named after? And the answer to that has nothing to do with China, but that's a long tangent. I don't want to really explore that because then you have to get into, phonological sounds and previous ways that people used to write in Korean, and we don't have time for that. So just it's not related to China.
Okay.
But anyway, needless to say that I think that the rumor spread because people in China thought it was petty and anti-Chinese that Seoul was changing its name by eliminating Han. So they figure that by similarly eliminating Han from the country name, that it is believable that the country is being petty and anti-Chinese by eliminating Han, even if the Han isn't the same Han that means Chinese. And I just realized that it probably doesn't really make much sense unless you're already familiar with Chinese characters. So if you're lost, my bad. The verdict was false, and Korea is not changing its name in Korean or Chinese or English anytime soon.
Okay. Yeah, it's interesting because you do think, or I guess I didn't specifically make the connection the Han River and then Hanguo and stuff like that, or Hanguk.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to think about. I wonder, at least for me, I don't really think about the origins of a city name unless unless something like this comes up.
Yes. But. Okay.
And on that note, this episode of RFA Insider draws to a close. For Eugene Huang, I'm Amy Lee.
And we'll see you next time. Catch you later.